Do you feel that in a time when we are more connected than ever, we are drifting away from real human connection, especially to ourselves? I do. Hi, I'm Leticia Latino, and I want to invite you to join me and my very inspiring guests in exploring ways to reconnect to your essence, to your definite purpose, to what makes you tick. Are you ready? Hello, everybody, and welcome to a new episode of Back to Basics, Reconnecting to the Essence of You. Today's guest is someone who has built a life at the intersection of art, identity, and impact. Rodney Eric López is an educator, artist, and nonprofit leader whose work uses dance as powerful bridge connecting community, cultures, and conversations that matter. You may recognize him from the documentary Mad Hot Ballroom, but his journey goes far beyond the screen, spanning education, public relations, coaching, and community leadership. He's also the author of The Generosity Solution and is now preparing to release a deeply personal memoir, I Don't Speak Spanish, but I Understand Everything When I'm Dancing. Rodney's work challenges us to rethink identity, belonging, and what it really means to give and to connect. Hello, Rodney, and welcome to Back to Basics.
Hello, Leticia. I'm happy to be with you. This is wonderful.
Yes, well, I by reading and doing a little research on everything that you're doing is extremely inspiring, obviously. And obviously reading your memoir and all that and all that you've done, it's just really interesting. But let's start with your origin story. Tell us a little bit about your upbringing. What were you passionate about growing up? What did you dream of becoming when you were a grown-up?
That's a wonderful question because it takes you back to the beginning. It takes you back to your childhood dreams, which is always a beautiful thing. I'm born and raised in the Bronx. I'm a native New Yorker, a native Bronx Puerto Rican, New Yorican, as I like to call myself. My parents were born in Puerto Rico, but they met in New York City. And, growing up, I thought I was going to be, especially when I started getting to the age of, 9, 10, and 11, if you ask me about my dreams, I thought I was going to be the Puerto Rican Bryant Gumbel. I was someone who loved television news. I didn't know what it was. I didn't know anything about it. All I knew is that I saw this gentleman on the screen every morning on the Today Show, and I thought he kind of represents something that I aspire to. I appreciated the image of what he projected, even though I didn't understand the business. I just knew that was something I wanted to kind of be. And so, growing up, I gravitated towards the communication arts, towards theater and all these other things. And then eventually majored in journalism in college, thinking that was going to be my career. But all of my internships wound up being in public relations and marketing. So I wound up going in the other direction. My journalism friends all said I went to the dark side. But in college, I did all the journalism things. I wrote for the paper. I did radio. I did television because I thought that's where I was going to end up. But I wound up in public relations. I first did nonprofit, then in economic development, and eventually corporate. But a few years into that, I realized that there was another calling for me, and I went in a completely different direction. But that's where it kind of all started. It started as sort of this love of communication arts.
What an incredible background and setup for. There's so much that I want to talk to you about in terms of what you're doing right now, and the dancing and the book and all these other and the workshops. So obviously, well, as I always say here, there's no lost skill. Like everybody that has shared their journey, and they say, well, I went into this, I didn't like it, but then I went into it. But then I am happy I did that because that worked for this thing I'm passionate about. So obviously, by you sharing about the journalism beginning and all that is definitely has served you well. Obviously, there was a moment in time when you made a big pivot. Anybody that has a web page with their own name, and I say that was a big pivot, and I'm on your boat as well. which I love. When I did my own webpage, I thought at the end of the day, we are the brand. We are a brand, as a human being, and it doesn't need to be marketing related. It's like, who are we really? What are we passionate about? That's why I love your webpage. But so, what was that process for you when maybe you decided to pivot in a big way into what you were doing?
It's a great question, and I love your setup of that question because it's true. The when you put your name out there and you put your story out there, you have to be really. You don't have to make a decision for the rest of your life, but you do want to feel like your name and your story means something and that it has resonance with people. And so I think we all do that when we go through that process. For me, the story, Leticia, began when, a few years into my public relations career, I met a young lady who was a professional salsa dancer. And we started going out together. And what I realized was that this was a part of my experience as a Puerto Rican that was missing. My father was a salsa musician at night. That's not what he did for a living. But at night, and this was before I was born, he played in salsa bands. So salsa music was always in the background in my home. It was there, but when it's your parents' music, it's not cool, right? Like if it's when your parents listen to music, it's not fun. But when you discover it for yourself, you have a different relationship to it. And so I started dancing first for fun. It began as a hobby. It began mostly because I wanted to follow this girl around. But then eventually, I started to have my own relationship to it. And after a couple of years, what I started to realize was that I grew up not speaking Spanish. My parents were, and this is what the book is about, essentially. My parents came from Puerto Rico, and they were discriminated against for not speaking English. So they raised me with they wanted me to be a proud Puerto Rican, but they wanted to raise me with an English-only kind of upbringing. They wanted to make sure that I didn't have the same kind of discriminatory experiences that they did. So I had this upbringing where Spanish was in the background, just like salsa was in the background, but I couldn't participate in it because I wasn't given the opportunity to practice the language. So I grew up with this real sense of shame and frustration around not being able to participate in conversations that the rest of my family could, or other people in my community could. So I took Spanish in high school, but the problem with taking Spanish in high school is that when you speak Spanish that way, you don't sound like your family. You sound like you learned Spanish from a textbook. And I got made fun of for that too. So I had this really big chip on my shoulder around, well, if I don't speak Spanish, I feel like I'm outside. So dancing salsa became this sort of alternative way to experience my culture and to dive deep into what Puerto Rican culture is, because salsa is very much a product of the New York Puerto Rican community. It is exported all over the world, but it did a lot of its growing up in New York City. And so becoming a professional salsa dancer, which eventually I did, I eventually left my career and became a professional salsa dancer, which my parents thought was absolutely insane. That began a 25-year journey of me looking at what it means to be fluent in a different kind of language. So maybe I can't speak the language of my parents and my family and my ancestors, but I can speak this other language that gives me a different kind of cultural fluency. And so as a dancer, as an instructor, and eventually as a teaching artist of children, I found this new skill set and I found this new way of being. And so to go back to your original question, none of my experience was wasted, because everything I learned as a writer, as a communicator, as a marketer came back to help me, because I eventually became a nonprofit leader. I wound up doing lots of other things, and those skill sets never go to waste. So, that's a short version of the story, but what this book is about, it's about trying to understand that language is only one way to experience culture, and that if you can't speak the language of your homeland, you shouldn't feel less than. There are other ways to authentically embody your culture.
That's a very powerful perspective, I will say, and I think it's so important that you share it, because usually people assume things like, like, oh, or you're Latin, so you speak Spanish. So your experience is completely the opposite. In terms of, my parents are, but they wanted me so much to be, part of this culture that they left me out of my other culture. And the roots and where you're from is so important. And I always say, where you're born, I was born in Venezuela, but my parents are Italian. And for them, it was the opposite. Like they were always saying, you're not Venezuelan. Like they were speaking Italian at home, speaking like reinforcing. I'm like, but this is my country. I was born here. Last time I checked.
Wow, look at that.
So it's kind of, anybody lives it differently, I guess. But the important thing is that feeling of belonging, that you that they say, I want to belong in my family. These are the people that are the most similar to me. And I imagine how lonely must have felt to you, that these are my people, and I am not feeling like I can communicate that I belong here in the cultural way of speaking. So that's very interesting perspective for sure.
Yeah, the second chapter of the book is called "So He Won't Understand," and in my case, what my parents did was, whenever they wanted to have an adult conversation, right? A conversation that wasn't appropriate for children. Uh-huh. What my mother would do she would say, "Habla en español para que él no entienda." So essentially, my first messages around Spanish it was something that was not meant for me. Because my parents, instead of using it to include me, they used it to exclude me. Now, of course, they were doing it for a good reason, right? They were doing it to protect me from something, but there are a lot of other ways to do that. But they chose to use Spanish as the barrier as opposed to as an invitation. And so when that's the message growing up, you really feel like an outsider kind of in your own home. Yeah. Even though the intention was good, the effect of it was negative. And I grew up with lots of resentment around that for really most of my adult life, until I became a parent myself. And I understood that this stuff isn't easy. Raising children is not easy. Transmitting language is not easy. It's not easy. It takes a community. It takes a village. But you don't know that at the time. All you know as a child and as an adolescent is that somehow you don't fit in. And so my goal with this book is to invite people to really let go of any shame they may have. Because Leticia, the shame comes two different ways. It comes either because you can't speak the language of your homeland or your parents' homeland. And so you feel less than because of that. But the shame comes another way. You might be able to speak the language. Maybe you can speak Spanish or Italian or Chinese, but your kids can't. So if you're a parent, especially in a United States context, right? In the US context, the United States doesn't value multilingualism the same way it's valued in Europe and in other places in the world. So you might be fluent in your home language, but then you raise kids in the United States and all they want to do is speak English. And so now you feel shame that you can't pass that on. You feel like you're letting them down. And so this book is an invitation for people to examine that, to let that go, and to look at other ways to experience your culture.
I'm a fan because I think you're definitely touching, I'm going to read it. You're touching on something that is not discussed enough. And as you say, it's, again, in my own prayer, the people say, are you Venezuelan or are you Italian? And I cannot, it's not that simple, because you get the culture from your parents. That's where you get your culture from. But that's when you're not raised in that country where they are from, it's different. And my aha moment was with my son, who was, to your point, they're American. And my biggest shock and trauma was when I was eating white rice one day at home, and my dad said to me, almost disgusted, "You're eating like a Venezuelan." And
Wow.
because Italians don't eat rice as a side dish. That's the main risotto is a main dish. They don't use it with something, right? So for an Italian, that's like crazy.
Look at that.
And that's when I would say, well, last time I check, I'm Venezuelan, so I'll eat the rice with the meat. And but then, not too long ago, I see my son eating this burger, and the thing is dropping everywhere. And I'm like, "You're eating like an American." And I'm like, oh my God, I touched what my dad touched. And I call him and I apologize. And I say, I now understand. You don't say it with a bad feeling. You say like, this person is different from me, and this is my kid, and it shouldn't be different. And it just, people don't understand those. Even for me, it was like an aha moment. So this is a learning experience. I'm so happy you wrote a whole book about these kind of nuances, because they're important.
Absolutely, Leticia. And I think that while I believe this book is for everyone, I really do. I believe this book is for everyone who, especially people who come to the United States from somewhere else.
Mm-hmm.
Or
which is a lot of them.
Right, which is a lot.
It's a lot of us.
Whose parents do, right? Or whose parents do. Maybe you're second generation, maybe you're third generation. But you have roots outside of the United States. And so you are carrying something. And like you said, culture comes primarily through the family. It's the first transmitter of culture. Now we get culture from other places too, our friends, our schools, our media, but the family is the first, right? And so while I believe this book is for everyone, I believe it's particularly going to be of particular interest to people who are parents, because parents understand, or caretakers, I should say, parents and caretakers who understand what it's like to have to transmit culture and language to another generation. And there is a unique feeling of vulnerability, because just like you said, you wind up, without even realizing it, you wind up speaking like your parents. You wind up saying things that you didn't think you were going to say, or that you thought you were going to do differently than your parents. Because I can assure you, I went into parenthood with my children's mother. We went into parenthood with the intention that those kids were going to speak Spanish, because I didn't want to repeat the mistake that my parents made, or that I thought my parents made. But when you have to do it, and you realize how much work goes into language transmission, you realize it's not as easy as you thought. And so I came to parenthood with much more empathy for my parents, because for most of my adult life, I had resentment on this issue. But as a parent, I understood that it was important to have some grace around this issue, because language transmission is so much more nuanced and so much more complex than we thought it was. And so it's important to take that kind of reflection and to have that moment to heal yourself, because there are much larger issues involved in language transmission that are beyond the family. There's community, there's language policy, there's educational policy, and these are things we don't have control over. So I hope this book is an invitation to healing for people.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it's very spot on. I love the subject. And then the fact that you say, well, I don't speak the language, but I can dance and get closer to it. And I'm sorry to keep bringing my own experience, but in the States, similar to to what we're talking, every time I meet somebody says, I'm Italian. Say, I'm Italian too. And I say, well, where from? And they don't know exactly where from. So there's a huge, precise disconnection with a lot of immigrants. They want to touch, they want to feel close, but they don't know how to, because they are third generation. They don't know exactly where the grandparents were from. They don't speak the language, but they want to belong. And they belong because that's their heritage, right? So the fact that you connected that with, well, I cannot connect this way, I'm going to dance. So I'm going to invite everybody listening to this to think about how can you connect with your own roots, with your own heritage. Because what Rodney's sharing is very powerful. There's other ways. You don't only need to speak the language or do other things. You can get close to an activity or thing you enjoy that brings you closer to that.
That is so true. And for me, salsa was that direct connection to not just to my culture, but actually even to like my family and my neighborhood, because there were people in my own family who were connected to the people who made this music. So it wasn't even something that was generations removed. It was only years removed. And so I could draw a straight line from the creation of this music, the development of this dance, this art form, to my own experience. I was only a generation removed. And so for me, it was salsa. It was salsa music and it was salsa dance. But for somebody else, it might be food and cuisine. For someone else, it might be literature. For someone else, it might be fashion and clothing. Our cultures are so rich, and there are so many ways to peel back the layers of what it means to be Puerto Rican, Dominican, Italian, Chinese, whatever you are, that if you don't have access to the language, you shouldn't let that be the determining factor in your sense of cultural authenticity. I don't know if you're a sports fan, but we just finished watching. I loved the end of the World Baseball Classic.
I'm Venezuelan, remember?
And Venezuela just won the tournament, and they just beat the U. Look at you waving your Venezuelan flag. Look at you with your pride.
Venezuelan. For this one, I'm very Venezuelan. For soccer, I'm very Italian.
But let me tell you, the Italians did a great job too. The Italian team, and what I loved about this was that the commentators during the tournament, they kept saying pretty much everybody on the Italian team was an Italian American. There was like only one or two players actually from Italy, but it meant so much for them to play for Italy, because they felt like they were representing something that was meaningful to them. The Venezolanos on the team, some of them play, a number of those people play in Major League Baseball, but those men were in tears at the end of the game because what they understood was that they weren't just playing baseball, they were representing their country. And so there are so many different ways.
I love it.
Access culture, that if you can't speak the language, listen, I'm sure only one or two people on that Italian team spoke Italian, right?
Yeah. And the coach was Venezuelan Italian. I don't know if you know this.
I heard that.
Yeah, the coach is Venezuelan for the creating even more interesting subject. But you're right.
There's just all these different ways.
And they were criticized, a lot of those players, playing for Italy. So it's interesting because on one end, people are proud of the heritage, but then when the time comes, they get put into this conflict, which a lot of us in that situation. Imagine me, I have 3 passports, US, the Italian, and Venezuelan. And those three teams play against each other on semifinal and final. And I'm like, this is too much for me.
It was fascinating. And what's interesting, and I know we didn't come here to talk about baseball, but I'm glad we're talking about baseball because what's interesting is Francisco Cervelli, the manager, the Italian coach, right? He said, listen, this is good for Italian baseball. Now I get to go back to Italy and say, hey, listen, there's more than just soccer out here. Like, you can play baseball and you can be good at it. So I wouldn't be surprised if we saw a new generation of children playing baseball in Italy because of what these Italian Americans are doing, right?
Absolutely.
And so this is how culture works. It's fluid, it's expansive, it can be inclusive. And so I want people to understand that there can be some look. I not so much anymore because I have found some healing in this. But I remember I would go to a restaurant, a Spanish restaurant, and I would feel very nervous about ordering food, like something as simple as ordering from a menu, Or when I went to Puerto Rico to visit family, I would feel very self-conscious and very much like I didn't belong. And I was there to visit family. But I would feel very much like an outsider amongst my own relatives because conversations were happening that I couldn't participate in. This is a heavy thing to carry because it's a silent shame. It's not a shame that speaks from the rooftops. It's something you carry inside of you and you never talk about it. And so I want this book to start conversations about why do we carry that shame? Where does it come from? And can we start to let some of that go?
Fantastic. Well, and you're doing important work because I wanna move to how you have translated the dance into corporate workshops. I mean, that's a brilliant idea. It's all on your webpage. It's going to be on the show notes. But tell us about that incredible work you're doing in the corporate world.
Yeah, so for nearly 20 years, I was a teaching artist with a wonderful organization called Dancing Classrooms. You mentioned in the introduction, the documentary film Mad Hot Ballroom. If you haven't seen it, please go see it. You can order it on Amazon Prime, I think. But it's a documentary about our work in 3 public schools in New York City, where we taught ballroom dancing to 5th grade children. And in 10 weeks, children learn 6 ballroom dances. And then at the end, they present this to their families. And then what the film depicts is our citywide ballroom dance competition. And it's a beautiful, beautiful story. Well, doing that work with children, I taught salsa to adults at night, and I taught ballroom dance to children during the day. And after doing that for 20 years, I learned, it took me a long time to figure this out, and I needed help, I needed coaching, I needed support to figure this out, was that dance was not just something you did for fun. It wasn't just something that was cute. What social dance does, particularly the partner dances, what dance does is teaches us a lot of important life lessons. It teaches us about confidence. It teaches us about connection. It teaches us to have empathy with each other. Because, Leticia, if I ask you to dance and I'm holding you and I'm dancing with you for 3 or 4 minutes, I can't really other you after that. I have to acknowledge your humanity. You have to acknowledge mine. Maybe we're nervous. Maybe this feels awkward. Maybe my palms are sweating. Maybe I'm afraid to make eye contact. Maybe I'm concerned that I'm going to step on your foot and I'm going to be embarrassed. These are all basic human emotions, and we feel them every day. What dance does is it brings it to the surface. It allows us to feel those feelings, but it allows us to connect with other people in a very special way, in a very difficult way sometimes for some people. For some people, this is very difficult work. It sounds like, they're just dancing together. Actually, there's a lot more going on beneath the surface. And so what I realized is that these lessons don't just belong for children, or not just for people who want to take dance lessons at a dance studio. We can do this in professional spaces. And people can learn how to build team. People can learn how to build community. People can work on empathy. You can work in an office with somebody for 10 years and never talk to them. You can pass their desk or pass their cubicle and do nothing but say good morning or hang out with them at the Christmas party at the end of the year. What my workshops do is they bring people together in this joyful way. We address the awkwardness. We address the embarrassment. But we do so in a way that's joyful, in a way that's fun. And then once we've had that dance experience together, we can sit down, we can debrief it, and then we can talk about what are some of the deeper issues that are happening in your office or in your workplace that this experience has highlighted. And so that's how I've been able to convert this work into professional spaces, and it's been absolutely a blast.
That's amazing. It sounds, again, very creative, but definitely I can see people connecting, absolutely connecting. My son we live in Miami. He just has had like 5 quinceañeras lately. Okay. And I'm so happy that he has, because, depending who they go to school, I know that other kids, they don't have a lot of Latin people, so they never go through it. But my son is having that experience, and he's learning to salsa. He's learning, and I can tell how much he's enjoying. I saw in your video you have line dancing. Now he wants to do line dancing.
Fantastic.
and he's benefiting from inviting a girl to dance, which I think in Latin culture is amazing. We have that as a vehicle to also socialize, where in other, when you don't dance salsa, don't dance ballroom or anything that needs a person to dance it with, it's also you're doing your thing, they're doing your thing, so you're not connecting the same way. So I'm really excited that he has seen firsthand, because initially he said, no, I don't want to dance. And now it's like he's willing after dinner to get in there and put a song and then learn some new moves.
It is,
So,
it is a gift and an experience that he will have for the rest of his life.
oh yeah, oh yeah.
And when we teach children, what we tell the adults, whether it's the principals or the teachers, what we say is, listen, this isn't about everybody becoming a dancer. This isn't about becoming a prophet. This isn't even about doing it as a hobby. It's a life skill. It is something that is going to stay with you forever. I have had countless, when I was teaching professionally in dance studios, I had countless couples come to me for private lessons to do their first dance at their wedding. And I can't tell you how many people came into that dance studio with lots of stress and anxiety because they had never danced before. This was their first time having to dance with somebody in a serious way. And think about it. The first time you dance is when 200 of your friends and family are looking at you at your wedding. Like that's super stressful. What if you had done that as a child? What if you had had the embodied experience of being in your body, moving with somebody else, having that sense of confidence, so that even if you don't remember any of your steps, you remember the feeling of being held, of holding somebody, and having that be a safe space. So now 20 years later, you're having your first dance at your wedding. It's not a stressful proposition. It's one that is joyful because your body has already told you that it's safe to do that.
Absolutely. And then there's always the one that I tell my son, I mean, you are good looking, and if you know how to dance, that's a killer combo, man.
That's what we call a fringe benefit. It's a fringe benefit.
Because they say the man leads. I mean, as a woman, you can dance well, but if the man you're dancing with doesn't dance equally well, you kind of screwed in a way. You have to follow whatever they're doing. You cannot just impose yourself. But if the man knows how to dance, that is, I mean, all the girls want to dance with you. And so I always joke around, or a grown up. I mean, I gave my Dutch husband salsa lessons as a gift in a shall we dance performance. Yeah, and he's a good dancer. So, but I think I encourage adults, anybody that to pick up dancing, because you're absolutely right. It's a beautiful skill that we take for granted, for sure. We take for granted not being able to do it. So tell me about this generosity solution. Is this a book you're working on?
It's a book I wrote several years ago.
Okay, so it's done.
It's out there. The generosity solution really is about my work. This was work that I did prior to doing this work around this particular book. I believe very strongly that when we're having, there's a theme in my work, which is the theme is shame. So this latest book is around language shame and culture shame. The generosity solution is a book about money shame, right? Mm-hmm. And the other thing we don't talk about in families enough is money. We say in this culture that it's impolite to talk about money, to ask somebody how much money they make or how much money they spend, right? We have this shame culture around money. And a large part of it has to do with the fact that we just don't know enough about it. We don't learn about it in school. A lot of times, maybe we don't talk about it at home. So our parents don't teach us things like budgeting, saving, investing. I didn't. I learned nothing about that stuff growing up. And then if you happen to grow up, either in a lower socioeconomic status, in an impoverished state or whatever, money is always stressful. There's never enough. And so we come into our adulthoods really feeling a deep sense of shame around money. And what the generosity solution is about starting with a giving practice. What would it mean if instead of focusing on what we don't have, We focus on what we do have. And what we do have, if we give it and we share it, we create space to welcome more in. I was somebody who graduated from college and went into this dance career with tax debt, significant tax debt, with student loan debt, with credit card debt. And this was a big source of tension with my parents, because, and particularly my dad, because he said, you have this good job, and now you're going to go and do this dance thing, which makes no money, and you have these financial problems. What are you doing? And I had a huge amount of shame around money. I didn't want to talk about it because I thought I had made all these mistakes with my debt. And what I learned, partly by through a sermon that I heard in church, and then eventually through other spiritual and secular readings that I did around it, is that when you start with giving, and you start a giving practice, even if it's a small amount, when you start giving, your mindset changes, and it moves from what I don't have to what I do have. And I started a giving practice and realized that actually I have more than I think. There are people in my community who are willing to help me. Resources started showing up for me in ways that I couldn't anticipate. And then I eventually was able to let go of the shame around money, because I realized a lot of people walking the streets around me are having the same thing. And so I created some growth groups at church, and then eventually created an online course called the Generosity and Abundance Process, and that's where the Generosity Solution came from. And it was a 10-year journey of letting go of money shame through discussion and through talking and through vulnerability, but really through giving. When you give, the universe gives back to you in ways that you can't always quantify, but are real. And that's what the Generosity Solution is about.
Well, that's powerful. I'm a firm believer on that mindset, and just, half full, glass half full, half empty. When you see, it's a very powerful statement. So I love everything you're saying. I can talk forever. Is there anything that you want to share that we haven't touched upon? Any projects? I know you're big on the book, and anything else. I know you do philanthropy. You're very involved in your community. There's so much there. But is there anything that you'd like to share with the audience that is exciting you these days?
No, I think the biggest thing is I feel so strongly that we have national discourses around other things. We have national discourses on race, DEI, immigration, education. These are all these can be controversial conversations. These can be conversations that cause division because we all have very strong feelings. And there's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with debate. There's nothing wrong with people having a difference of opinion. That's healthy. I think, though, that those conversations should never come from a place of lack or scarcity or shame. We should be able to speak from a place of empowerment, and really justice and equity for all. The reason I say all that is because what this book is about is it's not just about race and ethnicity. It's not just about immigration. It's not just about language. It's at the intersection of those things. And so what I hope is that a book like this will spark dinner table conversations. Like, this isn't about going to City Hall. This is about, what are you talking about at the dinner table? And how are you processing these feelings in your family? So I just invite people to go to my website, learn more about the book. If you're inspired to buy the book, I encourage you to buy it. But even if you don't, just take a few minutes to really think about what's your relationship to language, what's your relationship to culture, and if you're feeling any sense of lack or scarcity around that, consider looking elsewhere.
Fantastic. Well, thank you so much for that. And the last question of every interview is around what makes you tick. So obviously dancing makes you tick. I can see that. But in those days where you're doubting yourself, under source, like you need that to feel yourself, your soul. What is the practice or thing you like to do?
I think that the thing that makes me tick is learning something new. I'm someone who enjoys reading. I'm somebody who enjoys documentary films. I'm somebody who enjoys, a really good blog or a really good essay. And so, if I go too long without picking up a new idea or a new thought or a new something. I'm somebody who has to share these things. I'm an educator at heart. And so I'm somebody who likes to read something and then teach it to somebody, even if there's no purpose in it. I just like to do that. That's who I am. And so for me, what makes me tick is learning something new. I'm kind of a nerd that way. So I would say that's really been at the center of my career.
Yeah, that's why you're definitely I think so deep. Your thoughts are so deep, and you color situation in a way that I don't feel a lot of people are able to do. And for that, I thank you. And that probably is because you're always learning, always trying to cross connect thoughts and ideas. So I thank you so much for being part of Back to Basics, sharing your journey. And your wisdom, and I'm pretty sure that this interview, it resonated with me. So at least for that, I'm happy in a selfish way.
Absolutely.
So we always say if you can inspire one person, the job is done. Well, you've inspired me, so good job.
Thank you so much. That's wonderful.
Definitivamente. Thank you so much. And you even praised the Venezuelan team win. So this is a proof of interview.
I was so happy. I was so happy for Team Venezuela. That was really great.
Thank you so much. Well, to all of you out there, thanks for tuning in. I hope you enjoy this. And remember, find that thing that makes you feel closer to your heritage, your culture, your roots, and go do it. Thank you. And until the next episode of Back to Basics. Bye-bye.
You've been listening to Back to Basics. You can follow us on Instagram and Facebook. If you haven't yet, subscribe, rate, and review this podcast on Apple Podcast or any of your favorite streaming platforms. This is the best gift you can give us. Join me next week for another Back to Basics conversation. And if you want to find out about other exciting things I'm working on, visit leticialatino.com. Thank you, and until the next time.